The Dauntless. Hold on a moment, Jadza says before turning to Nurse Albert. I thought the Undaunted set off with the best of the best, and now I hear that you're half-trained. I started my medical training 2 months into the voyage out of cruel space. I needed something to occupy my time, and intense studying exclusively in a language I still struggled with fit perfectly. I was ready to actually start assisting in the medical bays by the time we finally got gravity back. I also ended up learning how to speak fluent Mandarin. Wait, I know this. Mandarin is an Asian language, right? A Chinese one? Yodza asks. Yes, indeed, which means I know 4 languages now. English, Spanish, Mandarin, and galactic trade. Anything else, ma'am? Is he going to be okay? Jadza presses. Oh, he's just a little winded. Keep him out of any marathons or firefights for the rest of the day, and don't get in his way if he smells food or goes for a drink, and he'll be fine. Which brings us to what Meilon here wants to talk about. Modan notes, and the empty hand master grins at him. Oh no, I'm still learning so much, Meilon notes. Pardon? Nurse Albert asks. Oh right, introductions. I am Meilon of the Empty Hand Masters. I've been raised and trained my whole life to seek ever greater enlightenment and self-mastery. Now I run into a race where the oldest members are toddlers to me, yet they can still keep up in a fight and blindside me bad enough that I need time to think about how to counter it. And even when it's fully countered, even then they can still fight like a monster. You'll forgive me for being curious. And what do you want? You had your fight, you've tested yourself. What next? Is he joking? Meilon asks, and Jadza considers. Honestly, it could go either way, Jadza remarks. He switches from seemingly all-knowing to oblivious with little warning. Let's call it cultural differences, Modan states. Of course, now that his attention has been brought to the fact he's missing, something makes him think, and it doesn't take him long to put it all together. Culture clash or no, he can easily see the patterns. So, are you proposing to me as most women of the galaxy do, or are you trying to follow your mother's example and go for some kind of adoption scheme? Scheme? How is it a scheme for my mother to want to adopt? The fact that Barnabas has parents and family in good standing, that kind of puts him out of the firing line for being adopted. You do know that there are many places that would consider parents under a century in age to be too young and in need of guidance, Meilon says wryly. Earth isn't one of them, and that's where they are. Modan replies calmly. Not to mention that kind of outside interference would be seen as extremely insulting. Hence why she's not being pushy, just reminding him and not trying to force it, Meilon notes. Mother's married, so when it comes to bringing strange men into the family, her options are playing matchmaker or doubling down on motherhood. You can guess which one she prefers. And let me guess, that's the lead up where you ask me, Miss Unmarried, Modan asks, and Meilon considers. Maybe. I'm not old, but I'm not a love-sick youngster either. It's a big commitment to get married and not one I should rush into. I really like how you're put together, but let's be honest, this whole ship could be used as the setting of some pretty steamy holovids, the kind that you keep well away from prepubescent children. So it's not just my abs, Modan teases her. I know what I like, and a man with a strong core has a lot to like, Meilon remarks. Still, I can see the excitement. I've faced other martial orders in battle. A crimson hewer is a flurry of blades, lasers, plasma, and a dozen technological advances attached to a shell of armor that's borderline unbreakable. A battle princess is only slightly slower and weaker than me, but the fire and swords are nothing short of a terror, but you fight differently. Undaunted training is a very strong way to learn to fight, but it's only a foundation, Meilon remarks. Only? Modan asks. I won the first round, only forfeited the second due to the sheer danger to the audience, and the third was interrupted. Yes, And Cenk fought my mother completely differently. She was testing his sheer resilience and gave him blows that would render some races catatonic. He had to be all but dragged away from her as he still wanted to keep going despite his injuries. If I challenge Nurse Albert here, I'll get a completely different fight. And those fights were completely different from the recordings I found of humans fighting. You share the basics and branch out so extremely that it's another style per person. Had I faced the Axiom Adept on Vuxa 5, I'd have been hit with null myself early and only if I dodged massive energy blasts. The one on Serbo could do any number of things, and rumors state that he makes no disruption to the Axiom while using it. Melan explains at length before smiling. Even if things like romance don't work out, you have as much to teach us as we have to teach you, which is refreshing. We always like running into another martial organization. Surely there are plenty of militaries the galaxy over, Jadza begins to ask before trailing off as Melan shakes her head. There's a difference between a martial order or organization and a military. Oh, they're close, don't get me wrong, but the difference is also as wide as the galaxy itself, Melan notes. A military exists for a singular purpose: violence. It is a career track for those who know how to do so. It can be benevolent, malevolent, competent, incompetent, and everything in between of any opposing descriptors. But what separates a martial order from a military, although some militaries like the Undaunted and the Battle Princesses of Serbo can be martial orders, is philosophy. Military is a job or a state function. A martial order is a way of life. Canadors in power armor are in many militaries the galaxy over. Some entire militaries are nothing but Canadors in power armor. But a Crimson Hewer is something else, something more. It's a way of life. Take two Apuk, equals in strength, skill, and fire, and if one of them has a princess's crown, then she is the greater threat. Not because of greater power, but her philosophy has made her more capable. I understand. It makes some sense at any rate. Everyone needs a code to live by, some way to organize their life and not just take it all as it comes. A martial order is one that heavily involves battle, Modan says, and Melan shakes her head. No, it's something else beyond that. It's called Bulhara in an older language, meaning fighting spirit, resolve, courage, and about a dozen other things. That's what Hera means at least. Bull means all life fighting spirit, all life resolve, all life courage, and more. Bulhara is how you take a martial artist and turn them into an empty hand master. Bulhara turns an Apuk warrior into a battle princess. Bulhara makes a Canador soldier into a Crimson Hewer, or a human soldier into an Undaunted. So is that why your mother is still here? She's testing our Bulhara? She's also refining her own. The best way to have stronger Bulhara is to test it against another's. It's not about winning or losing the fight as it is learning from it, growing from it, and becoming better, Melan says. I mean, you just forced me to enhance my senses by attacking with Tri-Tite from every angle, too fast to be individually tracked. You also showed me about indirect combat. A very interesting philosophy, the idea of going around the long way or even just the unexpected way to get what you want. Indirect combat, indirect problem solving. You don't have to go right for what you want to get it. That's a lot to think about. I suppose. I was just toying around to see if it was possible at all. And you made an entire combat style out of it, Melan states. Wait. This is why empty hand masters are always wandering. You're testing and observing the Bulhara of others to become stronger. By the time you get to one and finish learning from them, another 3 new ways have popped up. The journey never ends, Melan says with a smile. Still, this is a varied martial order. My mother and I will be here a while, and more may arrive before we depart. And where do you find the time for family and all that? Modan asks. Oh, it's so much more than fighting, Malon states even as Nurse Albert frowns and approaches her. He then pokes her through her clothing around her stomach and she flinches. Of course, because older does not mean wiser. Albert grunts out. Now we can do this the easy way or the hard way. But you're getting onto one of my beds and I am going to make sure you're not bleeding internally. I'm fine, doctor. Nurse, and you will be when I'm done with you. Get on the bed. No, she says after examining him for a moment and grinning at the prospect of what she's about to do. She then whirls around as Modan teleports directly behind her and then stiffens as Nurse Albert grabs her by the back of the head and starts pulling. That was cheating, Malon proclaims as Nurse Albert makes sure she's sitting on the bed. It's for your own good, ma'am. Now, you're clearly at least bruised. Do any of them in particular feel as if they are more severe in some way? Nurse Albert asks, as he gently squeezes along her arms and finds a few places where it's tender. No, she says, just as she downright flinches when he presses a sore spot on her back. Ma'am, lying won't get you out of this. It will, however, make it take longer. Please cooperate with me. I've got light bruising all over my body, although Modan has gone out of his way to avoid attacking around the breasts and crotch, the prude. Thank you for returning the favor and not striking him in the crotch, Nurse Albert says blandly, and Modan struggles to decide whether he should be embarrassed or not, even as Jadza smirks a little. Oh, I was tempted, but if I was to do something with his crotch, it would be at a much more relaxed and pleasant pace, Malon states, and Nurse Albert doesn't pause as he gently feels out down her legs and notes all the places where she sucks in a slight gasp of pain. So was that a proposition by your standards? Because if so, I'd recommend you at least hold off for a day before going all the way. Modan is quite exhausted and you are very much tenderized. Although I question as to why you haven't healed yourself yet, it seems to be a strange choice of action, as I have little to no doubt you're clearly capable of such a thing. Some girls like it rough. Well, putting that aside, are there any bits of pain when I do this? Nurse Albert asks as he puts some pressure on her feet to simulate weight on it. No. How about on this leg? He asks, and she gives him another no. Excellent. No fractures I can detect in the legs. Now for the arms. Neither arm is broken, and Malon is quite amused by the entire chain of events. You do know that you could just have used a scanner, right? You also know that while scanners can catch things that people miss, people can catch things scanners miss, right? Nurse Albert asks. Also, you're sitting on the scanner. It's incorporated into the bed. Well, aren't we a clever doctor? Work smarter, not harder, he says, even as he tests her by gently pushing down on her shoulders and then on her head. No pain from the pressure in the scanner comes up clean but for the bruising. And the machine agrees, tenderized but not broken. A bit of restorative meditation and you'll be bouncing off the walls again in no time. Either that or a few days rest to clear everything away. I do my restorative meditations before going to bed. Anything else while I'm sitting on a medical scanner? I suggest you eat a bit more than normal for dinner to help with your energy levels, but otherwise you're in amazing health for a tread. Thank you for your time and patience, Nurse Albert states. Thank you for your concern, doctor. Now I've heard something about something called lollipops somewhere, Malon asks in a teasing tone. Modan, the upper right drawer if you please, and it's Nurse Albert, I'm not a doctor yet, Nurse Albert states as Modan brings out a tall glass with numerous brightly colored and individually wrapped candies in them. Now these treats are for good children. Have you been a good little girl? I haven't, Modan jokes, and Nurse Albert slowly turns to him with a raised eyebrow and an unimpressed look on his face. For the record, hand them over, Albert says, and promptly receives the candies.